everyone, it's Jacqueline for Pixie Dust, PhD. When you're purchasing Disney Vacation Club, there will be three main things that you specify: your home resort, the number of annual points you'll receive, and your use year. Use year is kind of a weird concept, in my opinion, a little bit, at least because of the nomenclature, so let's try to break use year down into an understandable term. Very simply put, use year is a 12-month period of time where you'll get your annual allotment of points. It'll start on the first day of your given use year month. Why is it called a use year when it's really specified by the first day in a month? And on top of that, your use year really is referred to by its month. This is what I mean by I think the nomenclature is a little bit confusing of use year when really we're talking about the month. But this is the system we have to live with, so I'm just going to try to explain it in an understandable way. So when you buy a DVC contract, it will come with a use year. This is specified in a month. For example, you could have a February use year contract. This means that your annual allotment of points are replenished on February 1st of each year. Now, your year is not the calendar year. Your use year doesn't run then from February through December. It'll run from February 1st until January 31st. So it's just this 12-month period of time. DVC does not offer contracts with every month for use year. Notably missing are January, May, July, and November, meaning you won't be able to get a contract with a January use year. Each contract is assigned a use year at the time of purchase, and this use year cannot be changed at any point throughout the life of the contract. While you own it, you cannot change the use year to a different month that suits your needs better, and if you put it on the resale market, whoever that buyer is also not permitted to change the use year on that contract. Note that using your points during your use year is separate from booking a reservation. You absolutely can book a reservation outside of your use year using that use year's points. For example, if I want to do a DVC vacation at my home resort in June of 2020, my booking window for my home resort then opens 11 months in advance, July of 2019. So let's say I have that February use year. In July of 2019, I'm in the use year from February of 2019 until the end of January 2020. Now, my proposed June 2020 trip is actually in the next use year. That being said, you absolutely can book a reservation in July of 2019 for June of 2020 in a separate use year. So long as by your next use year, within that use year, you'll have enough points to cover that reservation. So I want to emphasize this for clarity. Your use year and your booking window are separate. You do not have to be within your use year to book a reservation. Another note that can be a little confusing due to the nomenclature is how your annual dues relate to your use year. Long story short is they don't. Your annual dues are based on a calendar year, whereas your use year is just that 12-month period of time. So you don't need to factor in which month of the year your use year is going to start if you're thinking about your annual dues. Your annual dues are not at all based on your use year. So why might your use year matter? It really depends on the type of vacationer that you are. If you travel to Walt Disney World sort of spontaneously throughout the year, or just in general throughout different times of the year, your use year probably isn't going to be a big deal for you. However, if you travel to Walt Disney World approximately the same time of every year, you really are going to want to consider your use year, especially when you think about the DVC short-term cancellation policy. We'll talk more about canceling DVC reservations in another video, but the gist of it is, if you cancel a DVC reservation within 30 days of your arrival, but also prior to your arrival date, your points will then go into a holding account. They won't go back into your normal DVC vacation point account. But essentially, this holding account has far more restrictions on your points. Not only can you not bank them, you also can't use these points to make a reservation that's more than 60 days in advance. I did a separate video covering banking and borrowing points, so if you need to know more about banking, go ahead and click this card. So here's how this plays out in practical terms. Let's say you generally head to Walt Disney World in July. If that's the case, you probably want to avoid an August use year. This is because if you have to cancel your July vacation for any reason, within 30 days of that trip, now those points are going into a holding account. And because your use year starts over on August 1st, you're actually going to have to use those points ASAP before August 1st. Because you can't bank them, if you don't use those points before your next use year starts over, they're just gone. In contrast, if you have a June use year for your yearly scheduled July Walt Disney World vacation, and you end up having to cancel your July vacation within 30 days for any reason, well, guess what? Now you have until your next use year, so before June 1st of next year, to use those points in your holding account. So rather than having a scramble to figure out how to use your points before the next use year and your points expire as if you had an August use year, with this June use year, you'll have plenty of time to figure out a better time for you to use those points and visit Walt Disney World. Another big factor to consider when thinking about use year is the deadline for banking your points. This is 4 months before your use year starts over. So if you have a February use year that starts on February 1st, the last day to bank your points is 4 months before that, or September 30th. If you have an August use year, the last day to bank your points is 4 months before that, so March 31st, and so on and so forth for the various use years. So let's go back to the example of your yearly July Walt Disney World trip. And again, let's say you have to cancel for some reason. But this time you have more of a heads up, and you can do this before the 30-day short-term penalty kicks in. In this case, your points don't go into that super restrictive holding account, they just go back to your general account, which is great. That being said, your use year does still apply to those points. So let's say your planned arrival date was July 20th, but you end up having to cancel on June 5th. Well, this is more than 30 days in advance, so your points will go back into your normal account and not into that holding account. But the use year for those points still applies. Now, if you have an August use year, you are past the deadline for banking your points, which was March 31st. So even though your points aren't in that holding account, you're still going to be in a bit of a scramble to use those points. However, if you had a June use year, effectively your annual allotment of points was just given to you on June 1st. Today is June 5th, remember? So if you cancel on June 5th for points that you're going to use in July, well, you still have plenty of time to bank them. You have until 4 months before the next June 1st. So you can either use these points as normal, or if you simply won't be able to make it to Walt Disney World this year, you'll be able to bank them normally. So while on the surface use year might not seem like a big deal, putting a little bit of thought into it can really save you some headaches down the line. Another note to consider when thinking about banking and your use year is just your general overall life. For example, if you have an April use year, then your deadline to bank points is November 30th. Now, if you and your family go on a cruise every Thanksgiving and you're generally gone during this time without great internet access, maybe an April use year isn't for you, just because you'll have to deal with the logistics of banking your points before you leave for your family cruise over Thanksgiving. And if you forget, it'll be quite a panic. Be sure to take into account how your use year and that banking deadline may or may not be compatible with your work schedule, your vacation schedule, or any other yearly life events. That's a general overview of use year. Essentially, if you travel around the same time of year for the most part, you'll probably want to put some thought into the use year you consider buying on your DVC contract. I hope this video has helped you make sense of use year and can help you figure out which use year may make the most sense for you and your party. If you found this information helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Turn the bell icon on to receive notifications whenever I upload new videos. And if you want to chat in more casual and constant ways, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PixieDustPhD. For you current DVC owners, let us know in the comments down below if you paid any attention to your use year when you bought your first contract. Was this an important factor for your first contract or not? Do you regret not paying attention to it, or has everything worked out totally fine? Until next time, we'll see you real soon at PixieDustPhD.